Hey, there's Jordan. Delighted to be joined by Dawnya, a General Motors worker in Toledo. At the time of this conversation, it looks like there will be an announcement pretty soon that the tentative agreement will pass unless something dramatically changes. The vote tracker says right now it's about 55% approval, yes vote, to 45% no, which is a lot closer than the Ford vote and what we know about the Stellantis vote. Ford is closer to 70% yes. Stellantis, we have less information on, but let's just say General Motors, it's a much narrower vote. And from folks I've talked to, your colleagues at different plants, it seems the no vote in a lot of cases is, I guess you could say, less to do about this particular contract and more about years worth of frustrations boiling over into their vote. So first, let me ask you if you'd like to share, how did you vote and what are some of the problems you see in the contract, which again, we think will pass?
Well, I think with my situation and being involved with General Motors as long as I have, I understand both sides of the coin. I understand those who, you know, are against it because of the things that we have lost. We lost pensions and seniority and all kinds of things years back, and I understand that the new hires don't really understand that because they haven't been affected by it. So you got kind of a toss up of the view of the totality of the contract. I do agree that it's a record contract from the perspective of those on the outside or those who weren't involved in the bankruptcies and everything like that. It is a record contract. However, what we have gained is what we've clawed back from what we lost. So I look at that as it was record losses. So if everyone thinks that this is a record contract, can you imagine how we felt when we lost all of what we have just gained and we're still not back where we actually should be? Although I do applaud President Fain for his fight to get us what he did get us. I honestly didn't think we would get as far as we even did. GM is not easy to deal with. I'm sure none of the big three are easy to deal with. They're corporate bullies. They have all this money and they have power and they utilize it. So I do understand both sides. I kind of figured the contract would pass, and I figured it would pass narrowly with General Motors. I feel GM rank and file stood strong. I think it's not that they're saying that the contract isn't any good. I feel that they're saying we're tired. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. Um, they feel betrayed, and with good reason. I mean, we've had some pretty shady characters within our own international, which has been proven. So it's hard on GM rank and file to just say, "Oh yeah, that's a good contract. Let's just do it," and then leave it alone. When they come in with no retirement health care, that's a big issue. That's that causes a lot of the rank and file to say, "Wait a minute, you know, no." And Legacy knows how it goes. They know how this works. They know the outcome. They know that generally in these contracts, there's always the hidden language of what we call it, or the hidden agendas that start to show as the contract once it gets ratified and starts moving forward. So th- they vote on experience. They know how this goes. They know what has happened, and uh, I don't blame them. And then, of course,
And
the new hire.
let me just interrupt for a second and say it's now official that the contract passed. So
Right. Yeah.
by a 54% yes vote. So yeah, that'll be a 4.5 year contract that goes to May of 2028, which the UAW has openly said they are now trying to line up other industries and, healthcare workers, teachers, you name it, to have their contract expire at the same time. So potentially the next strike could be, closer to a general strike than just the UAW. But yeah, so a specific point I wanted to ask about is it sounds to me that some of the folks I've talked to, they look at the 25% wage increase, although on the surface it sounds great. When you factor in how much you gave back in wages and other things about 13 years ago, and then you factor in inflation, they feel like that's almost getting them back to where they were over a decade ago, maybe a little more, but it's not really 25% is the feedback I've gotten from folks who voted no.
Yeah, like I said, the legacy workers, they've lost so much through the years. And the new hires, this is a fantastic contract for the new hires. It is. I mean, it looks really good for them. But like I said, if you go back to the legacy worker, the ones that experienced the loss of the pensions, the seniority, things like that, it's a different story. I will say, recently I met with an international representative, Nicole Current, to look into the loss of our seniorities. Now, we haven't really spoke on pensions yet, but we have talked about the loss of corporate seniority, and we are going to get together. We were waiting for this to get resolved because she's caught up in that, but we're going to get together, myself and a couple of other people, and look into the seniority issues. So they haven't forgotten what has been lost. I figured it would not be all gained back in this particular contract, but the more people we can get to be organized, like Tesla, Toyota, things like that, that gives us bargaining power. The companies can't come in and then say, well, we have to remain competitive because everybody's going to be on the same playing field. President Fain is, and the IAB and all the organizers and everybody involved, UAWD, everybody involved, is really pushing for other companies to become UAW, and that will give us ultimate power. And I will say they haven't forgotten the losses. That is on their mind. We must remember that President Fain just took office. He's only been in office about 7 months. He has done a tremendous change in the trajectory of the UAW, in my opinion, just in this short period of time. I really didn't anticipate him to win everything that he did win. I was really shocked at COLA. I didn't see that coming. GM is not easy to deal with. I don't know about Ford and Stellantis because I'm not part of them, but I can imagine they're no different than GM, no better to deal with than GM is. So, when we get to the negotiations table with, international, being able for them to be able to go overseas and build their product and bring it here, it makes it a lot harder for us to negotiate at the table. It makes it harder for our stance on what we want. Once President Fain and them are able to get in and organize these other companies, I feel that we'll have a lot more bargaining power. I'm hoping that in the next contract, and I know they get tired of hearing next contract, but if you really, really look at this contract, and if we can just set aside for a moment what we have lost, and we look at what we gained here, it is a record contract. You really can't dispute that, in my opinion. So it gives you an idea of what President Fain is going for. He's going for clawing back what we've lost. He has relatives that have went through the losses and things like that. So he's got personal issues with them as well. So he's not going to just forget about it because this contract is done. It's on his mind. He spoke on it. He has spoke on it in public. He's just spoke on it at the State House. He speaks on the losses. He knows they're there, right. And he wants them to know we're coming to get them back. So we have to give him a little bit of time because he didn't get a whole lot of time to make the changes that have to be made, or the changes that he has made. We've got to give him credit for the changes that he has made. In my opinion, I give him full credit.
And with that said, for you personally, what was your main objection? And, you know, I assume reason you voted against it.
Everybody knows my situation is the seniority, loss of seniority and pensions. I make that pretty clear.
And when you say loss of seniority, you're talking about workers that moved to other plants but didn't keep their pay and seniority.
Right. In my particular situation, it was the Delphi situation. Delphi situation is really a black eye on General Motors and the International. It's something that we definitely have to, I feel we need to look back at. And it's not just Delphi. There's Guide, there's American Axle. American Axle really got hit, which I just recently found out about. I didn't even realize.
I just explained for the audience the short version, the Delphi situation, so they know what you're talking about.
The Delphi situation, we got caught up in the Delphi bankruptcy, and it divided the membership, the 99s, the 05s, and the 07s, which I was actually in 06. It divided everyone. They stated, you know, October 18th, 99, and prior, I believe it was, you know, your General Motors all the way. October 19th to the end of 2005, you get what you get. And 2007, sorry about your luck, you came in after the fact. Too bad. In my situation, 2006 actually wasn't even on the table. I cannot find 2006 language. Therefore, I feel that there's a fight there, in my opinion. But we're going to look into it. That's why I say Nicole Curran is getting ready to go through that. She's very versed in those things, and now that she has a whole different leadership, maybe things will be a little bit different when we look into it this particular time. So I'm looking forward to working with her, and I'm hoping that we can come up with some kind of solution to how they can just come in and take earned seniority and maybe make it so they cannot do that. You work that, you earn that. And a recent labor relations ruling states that, like a third-party company such as Delphi, when it's in with corporations such as General Motors cannot, or any corporate like General Motors, corporation like General Motors, can no longer say, well, we're not involved with them. We don't have anything to do with that. You know, that obviously GM had definite ties with Delphi. As a matter of fact, from my understanding, overseas, they are still involved with Delphi. In my situation, I have paperwork. Delphi sold to Close Bearings in Sandusky, Ohio in 2008. However, I have paperwork where General Motors and Delphi were selling off our equipment to Shanghai, China in 2011. And we were still, everything was supposed to be settled. They were selling equipment within the building. So when they actually closed in 2017, people from Shanghai, China came to get the equipment. So it was in the works all along. Was the International involved in that? I don't know. I didn't see anything from the International, any signatures or any names from that on that particular paperwork. But it shows me that there was some underhanded deals going on, and that GM is definitely still involved with Delphi at some point, in my opinion, from that paperwork and what I hear overseas.
You know, obviously I'm no expert on UAW. I'm just a journalist, but having, you know, I was on the ground there speaking with GM workers, Ford workers, Stellantis. I spoke with older workers who had been there, in some cases 40 years. I spoke with people who had been there 6 months. So I kind of got a flavor for the different versions of the struggle. And
Right.
something that sticks out to me, and to me is the takeaway between, you know, frankly, a lot of people voting no, is there's kind of this friction between workers who are just tired of being patient, tired of waiting, and just want the goddamn revolution now. And you can extend that beyond UAW to all working people. There's a friction between the workers who say, yeah, we're not waiting, no more wait until the next contract. We demand what we're entitled to back now.
Right.
And the fact that to kind of usher in that revolution, you need a stronger infrastructure. And what I mean by that is, as you mentioned, President Fain has only been in there for 7 months.
Right.
And he had a lot of mess to clean up, frankly. I mean, you had embezzlement scandals, bribery, even if you put aside the illegal stuff that was going on in leadership at the UAW and other unions, there was just kind of the go along to get along of UAW leaders basically being in bed with the companies. And just so to me, I got to tell you, I think he got a lot, not just him. I mean, there was a whole group of negotiators of things that the experts said weren't possible. I mean, I was listening to these idiots on local TV and in newspapers saying, oh, cost of living adjustment, that's gone. They're not getting that back. They're not getting anywhere near 20% wage increases. They'll be lucky if they get 15%. People who said, oh, the tiers, yeah, maybe they'll go down by a year. In most cases, it's been brought down to 3 years to get to that full pay. I agree. I don't think it's enough. I think pensions need to be restored. But do you agree that there's kind of like that friction between, to get all those things, I think UAW probably needs a stronger organizing infrastructure, more time, and to have more collaboration with other unions and other industries that might be striking to go on strike at the same time?
Yeah, I agree. I think President Fain has done a tremendous amount in his short period of time. Like I said, his communications department, I think, did a wonderful job. They really put it out there. They let the corporations know that we were not playing. And I feel that what they did was they ignited other unions to stand up. AFL-CIO came up, Teamsters came up. Everybody got that oomph behind them. Like, yeah, this is it. Let's do this. And it's paid off here and there. Like I said, it was a very, very short time frame for him to try to reverse all the wrongs. We have to understand and give him credit where credit is due. He has done a lot in a short period of time, and I feel it just by looking at that short period of time. Now, can you imagine what he did in that short period, that short window, what he can do in this next 4.5 years before we get to the next contract? I'm sure it's going to be an amazing journey for anyone that's going to be able to sit and watch it unfold. He's right when he says all these unions should try to ratify their contracts to end at the same time in May of 28, so that we can have power. That will give us power. It'll give us labor power, a huge labor movement. If everybody is right on the cusp of being able to strike and walk out at the same time across the board, all the different unions. The unions are gaining power. Corporations don't want you to believe that. Corporate-run media, the Kramers and all of those guys, they don't want you to believe that we are gaining power, but it's you can see it. You can see we're gaining power across the globe, not just in the United States. Our brothers and sisters in Brazil stood up for us. Our brothers and sisters in Mexico stood up for us. It's going global, and it's catching on. It's catching on like wildfire, because the blue collar workers, the laborers, the little guy, we are tired. We're tired of being pushed around. We're tired of being bullied, and we're starting to push back. And they don't want us to believe we have any power at all, but we do.
And to me, I was speaking with a General Motors worker in Warren, Michigan. And to me, obviously, the proof is in the pudding. The most important thing is the dollars and cents and the benefits. But to me, an equally important part of this strike that I think is already having ripple effects. We've seen the increase Hyundai just gave to workers, Honda gave to workers, Toyota, even Tesla. They wouldn't be given wage increases if not for the UAW strike and new contracts. But to me, an equally important development here is the psychological approach, meaning I don't know. If this was 2 years ago, I think the UAW would have taken a 10% increase and said, thank you. Let's live to fight another day. The throwing the contract in the garbage, the more aggressive in your face, not, the President Fain not showing up to the symbolic shaking of hands with, it might seem small, but that more aggressive approach. Frankly, there's a lot of working class people dying for that more aggressive approach for the politicians they elect that are supposedly progressive.
Yes.
So this new approach where we're not going to shake hands with the companies, we're going to toss their contracts in the garbage, we're going to call out their greed and be adversarial. That's how it should be. Right. I mean, we would love to live in a utopia where we could all be friends with the corporate CEOs because they're treating us well, but that's not the world we live in. I think that is very important to change that paradigm, not just for the next strike, but just permanently, so that these companies know the UAW isn't screwing around. We're not your friend. We're open to helping you make profits, but if it's shared equally.
Yeah, I agree. I think what President Fain did was he built that, he's starting to build that wall between labor and corporation, that friendly, we're buddies, let's go golfing, let's be pals kind of thing. He's put a kibosh on that. He's saying not anymore. This is over. And he's showing other unions that this is how it has to be. You have to stand up, really, really stand up to these corporations to get them to understand that, they're going to have to start sharing a little more of the pie than what they are, especially when they're showing billions in profits every single year after year, and they can pay 29, 25, 21 million dollars to a CEO every year. And if they're making that, think of the people that are up under them. They're also making millions. So it's not just them, so the only ones not getting anything is us at the bottom. Our labor is the reason they get that. Without it, we withhold our labor. Like President Fain said, we withhold our labor. Nobody makes anything. No money, nothing gets made. So, we are the wheels in this machine. We're the ones that are we're the pulleys, we're the gears. We make this machine move. So we need to be recognized for that. So I completely agree with President Fain's approach. No more handshake with the corporation. He should be out here with the members, talking to them and shaking their hands and letting them know that we are here for you. And he has made that very clear. He's made that very clear that the international works for the membership, that we are the highest authority. He's changing that thought of the hierarchy is the international and we come down here. That's never really been the way it's supposed to be, but it's been the way it's been run for quite a while. And he's changing that. Corporations are seeing that. Big media, corporation-owned media is seeing it. So the first thing they're going to want to do is try to come out and try to belittle us, belittle him. But I don't see that working this time. President Fain is he's not afraid. He stands up. He speaks the truth. He repeatedly says the same things because he is telling the truth. And hopefully over the years, he'll be able to change the conception of the membership toward the international as he shows his display of how he respects the membership, and that he realizes that they are the highest authority, and he comes to them. He asks them, what do you want? What can I do? But we have to remember, again, 7 months isn't a very long time to try to change around decades of wrong. He did what he could in a very short period of time. So I'm hoping that as time goes on, he'll be able to show what he can do and to make good on it. And I think he will. I believe that he will.
And lastly, I think it's kind of important, and for UAW workers watching, not to take the foot off the gas, because now everyone kind of takes a breath. The contract's for 4.5 years, but if you're gonna do much better in the next contract, get those pensions back, keep the wage increases going, other improvements, you're going to have to organize and build a more powerful UAW, as well as relationships and collaborations with other workers and industries. What would be your message? What do you want to see now that the contract is passed? Obviously, you got to go back to work, and there's only so many hours in the day, but what do you want the UAW to do in terms of building more power, not waiting till the next contract, but right now?
I think they're definitely going after building more power. And an example of that is like you stated, when Toyota and Honda and Hyundai and all of them came out immediately and just out of nowhere gave a $9 or $10 total raise, something along those lines. What I want those members to understand is those corporations could have been giving that to you all along. They gave it to you with no pressure from their members, from their employees. So organize, reach out to the UAW, reach out to the international, and get organized. These companies are trying to match the union wage to keep us out, and you got to ask yourself why. Why are they just giving money? It isn't because they're kind. They're doing it to try to avoid a union coming in, and you have to ask yourself, why do they want to avoid that? If they're willing to give the raises, they've got the money. So, organize. Right now we're out in Fremont, California. We're looking at Tesla and Toyota out there, and it'll spread like wildfire. It'll come. We're not letting up off the gas at all. We haven't even really taken a breath from this situation. During this situation, while it was still unfolding with the big three ratifying their TAs, they were already out there organizing. Our votes weren't in yet, and they're already out, in Fremont, California, doing what they need to do. So down south, we're coming. Foreign companies, we're coming. The union's coming. We're back in the fight. Like they said, I really want to thank President Fain and all those that on the IEB and anyone involved in it, the UAWD, the organizers, everybody, the communications department. Everybody did a wonderful job for us. We might not have gotten everything that we wanted, but we did pretty good. It is a very good contract, and I look forward to getting better and really ripping into these corporations and busting down the greed that they have blatantly displayed across the globe.
God willing, I'll see you in 4.5 years for a more powerful and rowdy strike.
Hey, you might see me before that if Nicole Curtin and those of us involved in that get something together. I'll be getting a hold of you so we can let the membership and the audience know. Oh, and
absolutely
contribute to Status Coup. These guys have been on the ground for us since day one. They are definitely for the labor movement. Help them out, guys, if you can. Now that we're back to work and we got those raises, kick in a couple bucks. Let them know.
I will say, and I don't mean this in an arrogant way, but I do think the continued coverage of the strikes. I mean, we were on the ground for the first 25 days. I do think that made a difference because, you could have, newspapers writing about it, but seeing the strikes live, even, from the big ones to the ones that were smaller, it just keeps that energy going. It keeps the awareness going. And I think it's important, CNN and the rest were not going to be airing that live. They were doing a couple minute short thing, short segments, and they were basically trying to make it seem like the economy was going to fall or the sky was going to fall. It didn't. But I think, having media, us or others, to cover that is very, very important. So I thank you for that. And thanks to everyone who signed up as members. And we'll definitely continue covering UAW even during this new contract. So take care.
If I can, Jordan, work life, that's something that's huge too. The mandated 12-hour work days, that's got to change. And I do know that President Fain is working on that. I can tell you that. I do know that he's working on getting that changed. So hang in
Absolutely.
there, membership, UAW, International Union under President Fain. They're coming. Just hang in there.
Absolutely. Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. Delighted to be joined by Sean Crawford. You're a General Motors worker at the Warren Tech Center. And right now, I mean, by the time we post this, the deal might already be approved. But right now, it's pretty close. Not every plant has voted on the temporary agreement, but it seems that at the moment, it's about 54 to 55% voting yes, and 40-something% voting no, which is a lot higher proportion voting no than at Ford and Stellantis. So tell me about, obviously you could only speak for you and your plant, but what is some of the reasons why workers have voted no? And for you personally, how did you vote?
Well, there's an old saying that goes once bitten, twice shy. And 2019 was a really intense year for General Motors workers. Everyone went out on strike. We all remember that well. We had about the same amount of time that we were out, and we didn't get shit for that agreement. And on top of that, we got a huge corruption scandal. And I think a lot of folks are just kind of innately skeptical of UAW leadership. Not a whole lot of people have been, they're just not familiar with United All Workers for Democracy yet. And to a large extent, I think that accounts for it. People have higher expectations and they feel like they've been burned in the past. And so they're just a bit more skeptical and maybe a little more exhausted too, in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more.
And so almost like the no votes, obviously not all of them, but a lot of them are not only no to this particular deal, but kind of like a overall anger from years and years of frustrations. So voting no as a result of that anger.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of folks realize that, we should have got a contract like this back in 2015 or 2019. We're making up for lost time. And the corrupt previous administration really put us in a bad situation in that regard. We want full equality. I think everybody knows in their heart that's what a union is supposed to be all about, is full equality. And, as far as why I voted no, I mean, that's probably the main reason. I want to see pensions. I want to see health care after retirement, at least that. And it's really important in order to go forward as a single unit and achieve bigger and better goals and contracts in the future for us all to be on the same equal playing field. And sure, we did eliminate a lot of the tiered structures, but everyone has to admit there's a lot of them. There's probably 10, 11 different tiers in these national agreements, thanks to the previous administration. So we had a long way to go. And yeah, the raises are great, but I would have rather have seen full equality for everybody as opposed to getting a single penny in a raise, because, that's what a union is supposed to be all about, equality and inclusion.
So it sounds like to me, for you and a lot of others, and again, you're at the Warren, Michigan Tech Center, for you and a lot of others, the giveaways and concessions of 10 to 13 years ago were so egregious and so horrendous that not basically erasing all of those, meaning getting rid of tiers completely, is a non-starter. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, we want to be made whole. During the bankruptcy period, we gave up a ton of concessions, and it really made a huge impact on the quality of life for everyone who was hired after the bankruptcy. And we gave that up with the knowledge that we would be getting that all back. That was our understanding eventually once the company was profitable again. And obviously they're very profitable again, but they don't want us to go back to those old times, and that's, that to me, that's what we're fighting for and what I've been fighting for quite a while now.
Mm-hmm. And for you right now, the agreement is similar to the others. So you got 25% wage increases. You factor in the cost of living reinstatement, gives you obviously more money. Even if General Motors came back to the table and went up on wages for you, if there's still that 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 tier system, it doesn't matter if there's increased wages, if there's still going to be those tier systems.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only speaking for myself. I know a lot of other people have other issues. But yeah, for me, it's all about equality, period. Even if that means that I don't get a penny in a raise, I'm happy with my wage to a large extent. I mean, I know inflation is going up, but I want my brothers and sisters to be made whole. And I want to make sure that after killing myself on the assembly line for so many years, I'm able to survive when I retire. If we don't have a pension and we don't have health care in retirement, and we all know how crappy the healthcare system is in the United States, we need to make sure that we're able to be taken care of in that time once we've pretty much sacrificed our bodies and our lives to build cars for this company. And I think that it would behoove the UAW to figure out some way to negotiate maybe the General Motors of the big three as a whole, putting money into a common fund to advocate for single payer healthcare, because this is a class-based movement. It's not about us. Every worker out there shouldn't have to worry about what they're going to do when they retire as far as healthcare and pensions are concerned. So, I mean, ultimately, that's the only real long-term solution to the healthcare problem in this country is Medicare for all.
Absolutely. And what do you say to people who not agree with you and want the end of tiers and want basically to be given back all the giveaways, but also look at the different buckets that you did get? Experts said you would never get the cost of living adjustment reinstated. Most of these, media pundits said the most that they were going to do was go up about 10% increase in wages. What would you say to people who said you are getting a lot when you look at the wages, cost of living? GM agreed for the electric plants to be part of the master agreement. What would you say to that?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would say is to that last point, and I think this is something that personally bothered me, is that even though the electric battery plants were brought into the national agreement, they were brought into the national agreement at a much lower wage rate, which none of us realized until the last minute, until we were posed with the question of voting yes or no. So basically, the people who are going to be working in these electric plants or battery plants in the future will be making 75% of what the standard wage is for production workers. And to me, that's creating another tier. The whole point of this struggle is to eliminate tiers, not create more, and then just mention it at the last minute as an aside. So I think that raised a lot of red flags for me and my coworkers. Like, well, hey, if this is something we're just learning about, then what else is in there that we don't understand? And another aspect of it, and this goes back to the corruption of the previous administration, is how the contract was rolled out. A lot of us had and this is what I experienced at my local, is the day the rollout happened was the day we were expected to vote. People need time to process these things. I mean, these are long documents with hundreds of pages of legal language that folks deserve time to digest, because this is something that we will have to live under for the next 4.5 years. So we deserve a weekend to think about it before, they press us to vote yet one way or another. And obviously, even though there's been a lot of hay made about us being the final authority, being the membership, but there's been a lot of pressure to vote yes. And I mean, not quite as much as in the past, where they would do things like, well, if you vote this contract down, we might close your plant. That's what the administration caucus used to say, but still it's there. And tell me about that pressure. You receiving pressure from managers at your specific plant or from international? What form of pressure do you feel you've been getting to vote yes? I mean, just during the contract rollout, they're selling it to you. They're kind of glossing over some of the shortcomings. They always say, well, we didn't get everything. Well, it's more complicated than that. It's not just about, oh, we didn't get everything. It's like there are a lot of things that people really care about. So don't just gloss over people's concerns. There's a lot of trust. Basically, what it comes down to is there's a lot of trust that has to be built between the UAW and the membership still. And we went through a real good struggle and a really good fight. And I'm really happy with a lot of things in this agreement and the class struggle aspect of us striking all three companies at the same time. And I love the fact that it's inspiring a working class movement all over this country. I want to see that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, there's been kind of a collective trauma within the UAW that we're still sorting through, where people just don't have a whole lot of trust for the leadership, even though this leadership was democratically elected. And so in order to do that, folks have to, again, they have to have time to digest the terms of employment that they're going to have to exist under for the next 4.5 years.
And I know that for some workers, they didn't like being sent back to work until that this was ratified or voted on. They wanted to stay out on strike until full voting occurred. Obviously, from the company's point of view, if they were going to reach a tentative agreement, they wanted, as part of that agreement, you would go back to work immediately. Was that part of the issue where, workers at your plant didn't want to go back to work until this was decided on?
I know some people didn't agree with that. I think certain people felt like that was sort of soft. That's not how it's worked in the past. But at the same time, there was a lot of things about this struggle that were not similar to, what it was like in the past either. So
right.
I don't know. That didn't bother me so much, but I can see why it would bother some people.
Mm-hmm. And can you kind of talk about also, because it sounds to me, I mean, I'm no psychologist, but it sounds like you and your colleagues, it's not particular animosity or mistrust of Shawn Fain and this leadership in particular, but just in general, UAW and those wounds. You're talking bribery, embezzlement, corruption, not just for a year, but we're talking a while. That's hard to just kind of flip the switch and say, all right, I'm going to have a complete open mind and, let's take this deal. It seems like that trauma and that exploitation of workers has made it a higher bar to get you and others to vote yes.
Oh, absolutely. Just like I said earlier, 2019 was a hell of a year for us. And I think a lot of people are still reeling from the bullshit contract that we got out of that struggle. And to top it all off, even though Shawn Fain seems to be doing a really good job, and I appreciate his aggressive tone, there's still a lot of people downtown and in our locals that are part of the old caucus, that still believe in a delegate voting system. They didn't want one member, one vote, that still would rather have a team mentality, quote unquote, team mentality with the company. And that, they were not ashamed at all in admitting they felt the concessions were a good thing for them. And because it allowed them to continue living their quality of lifestyle. They were okay with the divide and conquer. And there's that kind of pro-corporate cooperation mentality that still exists within a lot of, dark corners of the UAW that aren't necessarily getting a whole lot of play now. And I'm happy about that, but they exist and we have to root them out. And that's going to a large degree, going to be up to us at the local level to run for office, to win office, and make sure that, folks at the local and regional level are on the same page and that we're not with this pro-corporate cooperation bullshit anymore. And we know whose side we're really on. Absolutely. But no, it's definitely not against Shawn Fain and what Unite All Workers for Democracy is doing. If anything, I want them to go further. We want to keep fighting for more. We want to keep fighting for economic justice.
Mm-hmm. And in your view, I think this is an important topic that was not part of the discussion. It's also come into play in presidential elections, is the fight for universal health care, because clearly, besides the moral imperative of that, it would take healthcare off the negotiating table. So the union can focus more on wages and other benefits. Obviously, Sean Fain has been talking about organizing beyond this contract, looking ahead to 2028, but also trying to line up other industries to potentially go on strike together. Would you like to see the UAW focus more on removing healthcare as a work benefit and leading the fight for universal healthcare from the government?
Oh, absolutely. There's no other way to do it long term. I mean, right now we have a system where you're basically being, what's the word I'm looking for? Not really bullied, but you're being blackmailed. If you don't pay what they want you to pay for the medications you need to survive, you can just fuck off and die. I mean, that's capitalist healthcare for you. It's not about what you need. It's not about what your doctor thinks is best for you. It's about what your insurance company is willing to pay for. And that's fundamentally immoral. I mean, when you need healthcare, when you need something to survive and be healthy, it should not be something that's on the negotiating table that can be taken away at the drop of a hat, like General Motors did during the 2019 strike. That puts us in a place of incredible vulnerability as a class and as a labor movement. I mean, just think of just in terms of the freedom aspect of single payer healthcare. If you had your healthcare taken care of, you'd be free to start your own business or change jobs. You wouldn't be shackled to just that one employer that happens to provide decent health insurance. That's a way to keep the working class under control. And it takes so much money that goes to the profiteers in that industry. That's money that we could be getting in wages and pensions and better working conditions and more vacation days. And the same goes for our entire the working class across the board. So it would be hugely advantageous in so many ways. But one of the things that I like that you touched on earlier, and I think it deserves to be highlighted, is the idea of a general strike and having our contract expiration date lining up with May Day. I think that's a fantastic idea, because with the labor movement, it's all about powers and numbers, right? That's the only way that we're going to be able to glean anything from the capitalist class, is through the power of our numbers. And in order to get to that point, we have to be coordinating. We have to be thinking about the future of how we're going to come together as a movement, not just currently existing unions, but other people from other sectors joining in a mass struggle to show who really has the power in this country, which is the working class. If we just collect, I think it was a former IWW organizer from back in the day said something like, all the working class has to do is put their hands in their pockets collectively, and they have the capitalist class whipped. And it's really that simple. Are you poor? Do you not have enough to pay for your bills and to pay for your family? Do you not have good health care for to take care of yourself and your family? There's an answer in the labor movement. Join a union, organize as a class. This is how we're going to make the life better for ourselves, for our children, for our families, and our communities. It's the only way. Waiting for a handout from these billionaires who really only care about themselves, you're going to be waiting a long ass time, let me tell you.
Right. And let me ask you, I know you voted no, and even though there are certain things you were happy with in the agreement, what do you say about, there's obviously been a ripple effect on a good note, Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, even Tesla raised wages. I don't think enough, but they certainly weren't going to raise them without this for the UAW. And according to Sean Fain, the UAW is getting flooded right now with outreach from non-union auto workers wanting to organize. So clearly, whether this specific contract is enough for you and some of your colleagues, obviously this is having positive effects in the wider working class movement.
Absolutely. No, I think that's fantastic. And that's exactly what we need. And I think after it's not just the big three, but the big 4, 5, and 6, after all the other automakers in this country, we need to expand out, because look, unions aren't just for the auto industry, and they're not just for blue collar workers. Anybody who works for a living and doesn't have the power to hire and fire somebody, you belong in a union too. And I can't wait to see these ripple effects growing and growing and growing, right? I want to see loans fired all over this world. Because here's another thing we don't talk enough about. You know, these companies are global. The labor movement is nationalistic. We can't function like that. You know, they're going to whipsaw us against Canada and Mexico and Brazil and any other country they can. You know, these companies, they don't care about this country. They care about the bottom line. And we've all seen that they will outsource our jobs to these other countries if they're able to undercut us. So we need to start thinking about our international brothers and sisters as well and organizing with them and make sure that wherever these companies go to outsource our jobs, there's a militant, aggressive, educated labor movement ready to greet them and say, hey, we're standing together as a class.
Mm-hmm. How about last question? Assuming that this passes, as we're talking, it's at 55% yes, but you know that's pretty close, and there's still a couple more plants that have to vote. Assuming this passes, what would you like to see as the next steps within the UAW? Because, like we're talking about, it can't just be take your foot off the gas because we have an agreement and go back to work. The organizing and the communication and the healing you're talking about between workers and the UAW needs to continue so that you are much, much stronger and more prepared in 2028. Because I think you kind of caught them off guard this time. The companies will certainly be a lot more well prepared to try and crush the next strike in 4.5 years.
Absolutely. Well, we need internal and external organizing to happen within the UAW. Internally, as far as rebuilding a democratic culture, a culture of participation, a culture of ownership of this union. You know, we're not just paying for a service, but we're members of a movement. We got to remember that and empower the membership to raise their voice so other people can be inspired. But also, like you said, we got to put our foot on the gas as far as organizing goes, because this puts us in a place of weakness, just in the sense of the fact that we have a target on our back now. We make good wages and good benefits. They're going to look for any excuse they can to get rid of those because that's more money for them and their rich shareholders, right? So we have to put the pedal to the metal on organizing. We have to organize all over this country in every sector that we can to build working class power and fight against this. You know, you hear a lot of people talk about, you know, we live a lower quality of life in this generation than our parents did for the very first time in the history of our country. And the only way we're going to reverse that is by increasing union density. You know, you look at countries that have the highest quality of life in the world, like, you know, the Northern Europe, European Nordic countries. Those are places with like 80-90% union density. It didn't just happen by accident. It happened by people collectively coming together and fighting for their common goals.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sean. Sean Crawford, GM worker at Warren Tech in Michigan. We'll keep in touch.